The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword is my favorite 3D Zelda game, but that doesn't mean it's without its flaws. That game has motion controls, which I personally don't mind, but it seems to bother a lot of people. It can be somewhat repetitive as you go to the same 3 areas 3 times each, once for the opening dungeons, once for the spirit trials and other dungeons, and once for the Song of the Hero. However, I'm not going to be talking about any of these things for today. Today I want to talk about repeated bosses. Now depending on who you ask, this could be a major flaw, but in my eyes, these repeated bosses can actually be some of the best in the series. However, they can certainly be done poorly as well, and today I'm going to be comparing how one can be done very right, and one can be done very wrong. There are 3 bosses you fight more than once. You fight Ghirahim 3 times, the Imprisoned 3 times, and Rock 2 times. For today's video, I'm going to focus in on Ghirahim and the Imprisoned. People constantly complain about the Imprisoned and why it's such a bad, repetitive, and annoying fight, but I rarely hear people say the same about Ghirahim. In fact, a lot of people say that he's their favorite boss, and today I'm going to be looking at why. From a purely logistics-based perspective, it seems they should be treated the same, as they're both bosses that are fought 3 times, with a few changes between each of their fights that leads to a scaling up of difficulty. There are a few changes, however, that lead to one experience being positive and the other being negative. The first thing I would like to look at is their characters. Starting with Ghirahim, you see he is charming, stylish, and just an all-around cool guy. His character design, along with his personality, instantly makes him likable, at least in my opinion. His arrogant, lofty tone and belief that we are below him both makes us respect him and want to fight and defeat him. Not only that, but his design changes over time, going from this to this. This is because as the game progresses and Zelda keeps escaping him, he gets more and more deranged, and his design reflects that, starting white with cool designs, and as he gets more deranged and insane, his skin gets darker and more cracked until it's fully dark, representing his true evil. Looking at the Imprisoned, however, we just see a large scaly egg boy that roars sometimes. His character design seems really uninspired, being just a large being with unproportionately short legs and long arms. I mean, his arms are twice as long as his legs. While he does change a bit, gaining arms in the second fight and a halo and tail in the third fight, they don't really make him look any better, and in fact, almost make him look more ugly. In fact, the only cool thing that he has is that when you defeat him, he explodes, filling the sealed grounds with spikes, before they all get sealed under the ground. Secondly, I want to look at their roles in the story. Ghirahim plays a major role in the story, being the main villain for most of the game. We meet him almost immediately, and he's the first fight we see in the game. He starts off mysteriously as we catch a glimpse of him watching as Link heads into the deep woods. We then see him throughout the game, not only during his boss fights, as he attempts to stop Impa and Zelda from entering the Gate of Time, when he activates Galactos, when he kidnaps Zelda in the Sealed Temple, and more. On the other hand, looking at the Imprisoned, we see him a couple times in Link's Nightmares, but in that he's reserved for the boss fights. We know he is important since he's demise and is said to be the same being that nearly defeated Hylia so many centuries ago, but until the very end of the game, it bears no impact on the story, and his demise alter ego seems distant and almost fictional. Ghirahim, on the other hand, says that he is the Demon Lord from the start, and attacks Link to back it up. He's a tangible enemy, and that makes him easier to view as a threat. Thirdly, I would like to look at the fights themselves. Ghirahim's fights are interesting, and he has a wide moveset, including darts, a fast dash attack, attempting to grab Link's sword, and more. His entire moveset changes in the second fight, with variations on old moves and some altogether new moves. The third fight, once again, is completely unique. This time you have to kill him in a different way, by knocking him off the platforms and eventually stabbing him in the gem in the center of his chest. Not only this, but he also wields an entirely new moveset. He first attacks with martial arts style attacks, and once he's brought down to the ground, he pulls out a sword and attacks Link. He even uses a dark variant of the Skyward Strike. The Imprisoned, however, doesn't even fight. He simply walks and crawls his way up the mountain, completely ignoring Link. The closest to an attack that he has is when his feet start shooting shockwaves whenever he steps. When I fought him, I found this to be more annoying than fun. In the later 2 boss fights, we see him grow arms and even fly, but these don't really serve any purpose except to make his fight slightly more annoying. They lead to him moving to the temple faster, but this just means you have a tighter time limit. The idea of chasing a boss up a mountain isn't the most exciting thing in the world. It just feels like the same boss fight 3 times in a row. Not only this, but the Imprisoned isn't even the boss you fight after completing a dungeon. Instead of getting a sense of satisfaction after being a difficult dungeon, you simply get annoyed because he interrupts important milestones throughout the game. Finally, I want to look at the terrain of the fight. Ghirahim has a variety of stages he's fought in. First one, at the bottom of Skyview Temple, is your typical boss arena, a circular arena with no hazards or anything, just a one-on-one fight. Second battle is similar but has an entirely different vibe, being in a new location with a fire aesthetic rather than a wooded one. The third fight is completely unique, however. He raises you up on magic platforms and fights you up there, forcing you to knock him off in order to defeat him, and after that, you then fight him on the ground. In all three Imprisoned fights, however, the location is the sealed grounds. Now I'm aware there isn't much they could have done to fix this because of the whole sealing him in aspect, but regardless, it doesn't help to make his fight any more likable or atmospheric. In fact, throughout all three boss fights, there is only one change to the terrain, the Grissinator. So concluding our analysis, we can see that there are actually a huge variety of factors that play into why Ghirahim is so much better than the Imprisoned, despite the fact that you fight them each multiple times. Ghirahim does almost everything well to change the fights and make them unique, allowing for great fights, but maintaining the actual character in order to keep the story flowing. The Imprisoned, however, barely changes and doesn't attempt to make each fight unique. The goal throughout all three fights is to drive the spike into his head and prevent him from reaching the temple. Beyond this, he has no character at all. Alright, thanks for making it to the end of the video. This was a really fun video to make and I enjoyed comparing these two bosses. Ghirahim was one of my favorite Zelda villains alongside Vati. But what did you think? Be sure to tell me if you had a differing opinion, or just tell me what your favorite Zelda villain is. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to like and subscribe. Also, don't forget I have an Instagram and Twitter accounts that will be linked below, so be sure to follow me on those. That's all I had for today, so until next time, I've been Triforce Truths, and I'm out.